What's going on, everyone? Alex Miller here from the Eagle, joined by A&am sports reporter Travis L. Brown. We just finished Monday press conference with Texas A&am coach Jimbo Fisher and a handful of A&am players. The Aggies coming off their win against Kent State, getting ready for their first road trip of the season. Well, it's pretty much a road trip. It's at a neutral site, but it's in Colorado's back door. The Aggies facing Colorado Buffaloes this Saturday in Denver. Travis, what were some of the initial takeaways from what we heard today from Jimbo and some players?
Well, of course, a lot of talk about Haynes King and what he was able to do. Again, Jimbo Fisher said that he was worried and was curious to see how much he would get caught up in the moment, and he said he didn't do that at all when there was mistakes, and he came to the sidelines. He knew exactly what was going wrong. A lot of the same kind of things that were said about Kellen Mond when he was first coming into this system, and of course, a lot of talk about how explosive Haynes King's legs were. Devon A-Chain again going on about how impressed he was with that, and Jalen Weidemeyer even saying that for as much as Kellen Mond was able to pull him aside and tell him little things to do, Jalen Weidemeyer Haynes King a couple times pulled over and said, hey, if you bend your route a little bit more, there's going to be a little bit of soft spot in the coverage on this certain coverage, and they were able to connect on that because of what he was saying, and Weidemeyer said, yeah, surely that is something that was going on. So Haynes King impressed a lot. From a housekeeping standpoint, Michael Clemens should be back this week. McKinley Jackson shouldn't. Of course, both were suspended for arrests. McKinley Jackson's still going through the university discipline process, and so he will be unavailable. Miles Jones should be back in practice this week, and Caden Davis should be back in the game. So should have a little bit more full staff coming into this game, as there were a good number of players that were out with injury, suspensions, all kinds of different things in this last game. So that's the basic gist of what we mostly heard from those guys. Damani Richardson was a lot of talk about Leon O'Neal,
right,
which we talked about last time, and Damani Richardson's ability to get down the field and block for him. A lot of with Leon's maturation process of a guy who plays with a lot of passion, is always fired up. But even he in the post-game press conference, which something that stood out, is he could actually put the pinpoint the Florida game last year. There was a time where he pulled in an interception, and then like 2 plays later got a personal foul and extended a drive for Florida, and was kind of back and forth and up and down in that game. And it's having that passion, but tempering it is what Jimbo Fisher said, and being able to do that is something that's really taken his game to the next level. And it's kind of something we saw this week, that he really didn't have those personal fouls, those little mental slip ups, and he had 2 key interceptions. Of course, the pick 6 was a big one, but Jimbo Fisher said there that the one at the end of the first half got them some momentum back. Both were pretty huge in the game. What did you hear and see?
Yeah. You mentioned what Jalen Weidemeyer said about Haynes King, and when Jimbo was asked about if he had heard Haynes doing some of those things, his ears and his eyes kind of perked up when reporter told him that Haynes had gone to Jalen and had said a couple of those things. I'm sure for Jimbo, he likes hearing those kinds of things, of your freshman quarterback already taking the initiative to go up to the leader, the veteran, and trying to pinpoint some of those mistakes and things that you can fix there on the fly. I feel like Haynes and Leon have kind of been the 2 focal points of the extended discussion. The personnel things I think are interesting, though. Getting Michael Clemens back, I thought Tyree Johnson played a pretty solid game on Saturday. DeMarvin Leal, obviously, he had a pretty good game himself. I'm curious how that could affect the rotation, or maybe the way the defensive line shakes up. We've seen where DeMarvin can go inside and out. So what kind of packages can the Aggies bring, adding Michael Clemens back? But then, after the game on Saturday, we talked about, I said, Miles Jones being out. At times Brian George was picked on, and then Tyreek Chappelle comes in, playing a little bit, gave up a few passes on the slant. So if Miles Jones is able to play, can A&am kind of shore up that other corner spot? Or, if Brian George gets the nod or Miles isn't able to go, can they take a step forward in their game this week against probably what will be a better opponent?
At that defensive end spot, it was something that Jimbo Fisher said right after the game, in their ability not to stop the run, and especially in those quarterback keepers and the quarterback scrambles, that their defensive ends were getting a little bit too far up the field and not crashing into the pocket as well. well. Another one you mentioned is that Fahil Diggs had a pretty good game, had a sack in that game too, but they weren't necessarily getting the same kind of penetration that he's wanting to get. Clemens will just add a little bit of competition to that, and you might see a little bit more of a rotation there if that same instance isn't happening. Another thing with that I remembered with the defensive rush, the rush defense, was the fact that they did play basically a dime defense for most of the game with a 4-1-6 with the linebacker for the most part serving as a spy on the quarterback. And in the few of those instances where the quarterback was able to get a bunch of yards, whoever the linebacker was, the spy was getting a little too aggressive and jumping in and trying to make that tackle instead of holding his position and forcing the quarterback or the rusher into unblocked defenders for help. And that's something that they're going to work on, because I know the rush defense was a little bit of a sticking point from that first game. Other thing that stuck out too, completely shifting from your question, was the amount of carries that both Isaiah Spiller and Devon Achane were going to have. I think Cease asked a really good question in the long Devon Achane touchdown run. Isaiah Spiller set that up with 3 straight good runs before that. He was subbed out, and it was the home run threat that Devon Achane, and kind of how that rotation is going to work. And Cease said it during the game, and I kind of thought the same thing. Was Isaiah Spiller, is his shoe come untied? Did his helmet come undone? Did he need to have some kind of equipment thing? Because he was running the ball effectively. Why make that switch? And it's just kind of a testament to that home run ability that Devon Achane has, and the thought that, if you go back to what Spiller has had to do the past 2 seasons, he's had to carry a strong load really 2 seasons ago because they didn't have that depth, and he took a lot of hits, and I think that kind of played out last year in some of the injuries that he's had to have. I think because he has had some of those injuries, you're going to see a little bit more of that rotation throughout to try to minimize the hits that both of them take, because like he said, their aspirations this season are for a playoff run and a national championship run. That's more games, that's more hits. You got to balance that load.
For sure. Well, Travis, I think we've hit all the main points. Be sure to check out theeagle.com. We're going to have plenty more coverage throughout this week, and coverage on Saturday leading up to A&M's game against Colorado. Well, for Travis Brown, I'm Alex Miller. We'll see you next time.